Hey, so today is the 15th of January 2019, and today is the day that I would have been meeting friends in Guilin, so it's a major regret. It's a major regret. Yesterday I made a video about the things that I would miss and not miss about my time in China. So today I want to do the other side of the coin, and that is things I did miss about the UK when I was in China, and I may have briefly covered this in videos that I made over there, but I just want to kind of summarize it. Things I missed about the UK when I was there, and things that I don't really welcome back. Things that I haven't welcomed with open arms because I think they're problems. So what did I miss? A very obvious one that I think a lot of people would feel. I miss my family. I just miss talking to my parents. I have quite a lot in common with my parents. I talk to them about a lot of things, and my niece and nephews. Had a little nephew born when I was out there, so just things like that. Christmas I did miss, but it was a bit more festive than I expected, so it wasn't as hard as I expected. New Year's Eve, well, it was quiet, but then it's sometimes quiet here as well. So yeah, my family, that goes without question. I miss them. Certain routine comforts or aspects of my lifestyle here. I think when you live for a period of time in another country, you have to adjust to differences. And this applies to any country, actually, East and West. I could go to another European country and there would be differences. Um, but for my personal lifestyle, there are things that I kind of had to sacrifice for a short time. And I'm not, making myself out to be a victim or something, but just things that, I'm used to that I knew, okay, well, this isn't going to be the case for the next 6 months. An example being I collect newspapers, right? It's been a collection of mine for over 10 years, so for a full 6 months, anything newsworthy happening, I had to just email my mother and say, "Mom, get the newspaper," because I think I may have one of the largest private collections in Sunderland. Um, I don't know if there's anyone that has a bigger private collection. I have 4,500 national newspapers plus, so there may be someone with a bigger collection. But this is something I've been doing for years. You can buy newspapers in China, but they tend to be very thin and flimsy. Needless to say, they're party mouthpieces. So that kind of flexibility of print choice I missed. Um, Also, the cinema. There were two cinemas in the city that I was in, but it was difficult to find an English language film. And the Chinese language films, they didn't all have subtitles. So I only went to the cinema once over there in my first city in Tongrem to see Mission Impossible, the latest Mission Impossible film, which was okay. I wouldn't say it was great. It was okay. It was entertaining enough. Some good action scenes. The good news is I've just checked my local Empire Cinema in Sunderland. Creed 2 is still out, so I'm going tonight. Very happy about that because I thought I'd missed that one. And as a big Rocky fan and a huge fan of Rocky 4, I really want to see Creed 2. Well, I'm going tonight, so that's great. What else did I miss? The comparatively far more open society. It just goes without question that there is far more scope for freedom of conscience in the UK than there is in China. It's just a fact. And it is just a fact that you can openly criticize the government here and you're not going to face any legal consequences unless you're directly posing a threat. So it's something that I was obviously aware of, but when you're over there, you do get the sense of constantly being aware of the authoritarianism. Now, I'll come to issues in the UK maybe later in this video, but I would challenge anyone who tries to make analogies here. There is simply no analogies between any Western country and the situation in China. There just isn't. So, yes, I did miss a comparative freedom and the right to peaceful dissent. The fact that I can freely criticize my government without facing consequences, it's a very important thing. The fact, with an extension to this, that I can freely use the internet. Pretty much every mainstream website is available. I don't need to use a VPN to access any websites that might be critical of the government or have platforms that are critical of the government. In China, the only way you can use YouTube or Facebook is with a VPN. And that's not so much a personal risk, but the providers are taking a risk. So it's a really sad situation. and you have to pay for it as well, by the way. I mean, I'm hugely grateful to my colleague Tina for helping me out with that, setting me up with the VPN. Okay, so those are all things I missed about the UK. Ultimately, I think, without question, there is far more freedom and transparency in a Western liberal democracy than there is in an authoritarian communist state. It goes without saying. Now, there are things I don't particularly welcome back. Quite frankly, my social life was better over there. It's not that I don't have friends here, I do, and I've got some dear friends here. But just generally, the social life over there was very good. What I mean by that is I got on very well with my colleagues. There was always something going on. Um, I'm not suggesting it was like parties every day, far from it, but I feel like a lot of my friends, at least half my friends, are in China. And where I live, my particular circumstance in life right now, I don't honestly have that many social opportunities. So that's something that I'm not completely depressed, but I'm just aware of it. And I hope I can find some gateways for, you know, expanding that a bit. It has been nice to see friends again, and I'm not one of these people that say, you need lots of friends to feel valued, but just generally my social life is not wonderful. Today, there's a big vote on Brexit, and that really exemplifies the next point I'm going to make. This country has been rocked by Brexit in terms of division, and it is palpable. And it's something that I was acutely aware of when I was over there because I saw news on Yahoo. When I had the VPN, I could access Western news, and very often I ignored it because I found it depressing. I found the divisiveness depressing, and it seems like this is going to be very deeply embedded and last for a long time, and I think that's tragic. And I think it exemplifies the fact that referendums are divisive by nature. That was the case in Scotland, and it's been the case with Brexit. And I'll just be clear, happy when all the dust settles, because I think right now the level of uncertainty on both sides is so high that there's this collective sense of despair might be a strong word, but sort of people are just drained of the whole thing. And I think there'll be a collective relief when the whole thing is over, whether that be going ahead with the referendum result and getting out, or if there's any possibility of the result being overturned, having another referendum, well, being overturned through another referendum. And, this is not a video about Brexit, but I'm just making the point that's obvious, the problem. And it's depressing to see what's happening in my country now, an extension of that. The crime that we're facing in this country. Violent crime has without doubt risen in the last few years, especially in the capital. I've just seen a video of a guy wielding a machete in broad daylight. I mean, what is happening to our capital city? Acid attacks, people being stabbed over nothing. It's profoundly depressing. And it's not that China doesn't have violent crime, it does. But I would contend that the general level of mindless thuggery is far, far less. When you hear about it in China, it tends to be extreme cases of mental health problems. In Britain, it's just an acceptance of antisocial behaviour. It's a plague in this country. I really believe that. I think it is a very, very big problem. I don't believe we're as dangerous as some countries, but we have a problem in this country, and I fear it's getting worse, especially in the capital. So, the chances of being violently mugged in China are almost non existent. You could go to a big city like Shanghai or Beijing, the chances of someone assaulting you or stabbing you are almost non existent. It's just very rare over there. And I'm not saying there's no crime, there is, but that sort of crime is very rare. And finally, another thing I really don't miss is the divisiveness again. This comes down to divisiveness of identity politics in the West. The level of political correctness and pandering to very narrow identity politics in the film industry, on university campuses. You see this all the time. There isn't a day goes by when you don't see an article about how terrible men are, about how terrible white people are, about how terrible cisgender people are. The point I'm making is We value freedom of expression in the West. We say this is one of our great values, but I genuinely believe it's under attack. I've just seen a report whereby a professor in Idaho is being threatened with sanction, is being threatened with losing his job, and possibly charged with hate speech for saying that parents should have the rights to make the final decision regarding so called transgender children. So he's been branded a Nazi, he's been called all sorts of things, his job is being threatened. This is something we're seeing echoed across university campuses in the Western world. So, quite honestly, we can't boast very loudly about freedom of expression. We have the right to criticise the government. I would contend that that is still very much there. That's a very good thing. But there's other power dynamics going on regarding identity politics. The film industry is the same. The whole thing now, it's no longer about film. It's about how many minority people does this film have? How many gay actresses does this film have? It's just become a nauseating drive to create this sort of society where everything is like a checklist. And we cannot boast about freedom of expression. I mean, this sort of identity politics and political correctness just doesn't exist in China. I think one reason is it's a very homogenous society. Okay, there are the minority groups, but they, from what I saw, this is my own honest observation, they were pretty integrated into mainstream Han society. So, I had friends who were Zhuang, who were Miao, who were Dong, and they were just Chinese. There was no, certainly they celebrated their culture. And from what I saw, that wasn't necessarily repressed. It's a different story in Xinjiang. But the point I'm making is the sort of political correctness we get in the West. In this sense, the Chinese are far, far less sensitive and they're far less interested in controlling words. They're far more authoritarian in other ways when it comes to, communism, when it comes to nationalism. They're incredibly sensitive on those issues. But on kind of social issues, men, women, sexuality, etc., I just don't think there is a noticeable sense of identity politics going on there. Now, my Chinese is limited. Maybe it is going on. I don't know, but I just didn't notice it. You know, Chinese social media see all sorts of quirky videos about, often silly videos, prank videos, girls getting boob jobs, things like that, but not, I don't know, I just don't think there is the same level of that sort of identity politics. So actually, we're complacent about freedom of conscience in the West. We say that we take it for granted. We say, oh, we have freedom of speech. But we have to be careful about this because there are areas, and I would argue militant transgender rights is one example, where actually scientific fact and the need for academic inquiry and debate and discussion in a rational manner is being made secondary to this notion of diversity, which doesn't actually mean diversity of opinion, it means a uniform convention, i.e., you have to believe that trans women are women, otherwise, you're a horrible, hateful Nazi bigot. So, I do think that is something that is very obvious in the West, and I absolutely see it as a problem. Um, my line is I see people as individuals. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're gay or straight, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. I don't care if you identify as a trans woman. But in the end of the day, the problem with identity politics is it destroys individuality. That is why it's so toxic. Because I mean, I saw a book on Waterstones yesterday. Not to get into a rant about this, but the book was actually entitled "Why I Will No Longer Speak to White People About Race," and the white was emphasized in big laminated white letters. I mean, this is basically a hateful manifesto. Why I will no longer speak to white people about race, and this had like bestseller, platforming in Warstones, which is a major retail chain. Just imagine, just imagine if you had a book saying why I am a white supremacist or whatever. It, that's what I detest about the current trend in the West, and I think it is a very, very big problem. But it's for other videos. Anyway, that's my summary. I have very mixed feelings about being back. In some ways, it's nice. I've got my own space. I could do certain things that I couldn't do over there. It'll be nice to see my family again, but having that last month cut off was hard and is hard. Um, I know I'm going to miss friends. I'm going to miss experiences over there. My concern is the Chinese government's going to make it harder for people to teach there in the future, and I think that the tensions right now between East and West could potentially get worse, and that's sad. Um, I've just heard that a man who was sentenced for drug smuggling offences is now they've sentenced him to death. Now, I don't know if he's guilty or innocent, but it seems to me very obvious that the only reason they're doing that right now, he's a Canadian citizen, is because they want to have a shot at Canada. And I think that's disgusting. To use someone's life to score political points, I think is absolutely disgusting. If he's guilty, yeah, he should serve time. But I'm against the death penalty for drug trafficking. Um, Drug lords might be a different matter, but not for drug mules. That's my stance on it. Anyway, I don't trust the Chinese legal system. I think they're doing it purely to score political points, and I think that's reprehensible. Anyway, I'll leave it there.